final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Friday after an incredible week of football talk here on Sports Talk and across the state from SEC and ACC Media Days. We are all back together once again in our beautiful plush downtown Columbia studios. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard. Good to see old Brian after he came back from a vacation trip to where'd you go? Was it Tahiti? Oh, Jamaica. I'm sorry. I get all those countries confused. Mr. Pelagic will be heading out after tonight.
Yes, sir. Heading to the South Carolina Low Country and then points north,
Warning.
west, and
Warning.
east.
How far west are you going?
All the way.
To?
I'm going to the Pacific Northwest to Seattle.
Great.
And then I'm going to visit one of your favorite cities, Boston.
Yeah, you know, in the winter months, it's one of my favorite cities. I hate it in the spring and the summer and into early October.
I'm going to go see Fenway Park first time.
Well, good. Yeah, I've been there before. I spat on it when I was there previously.
I don't understand how because you're such a, dual
winner. Such a winner?
No, you're such a dual
Winners
fan.
win.
Just a dual fan, but how you can love the basketball team in one city and then abhor the baseball team because of your
it's not
quote
a city
unquote
thing.
baseball affiliation.
It's not a city thing. I like the city of Boston. I love going to the Ye Old Oyster House right there on down in the Bay Area.
Union Oyster House there.
Union Oyster House. Union Oyster House. Yeah, great place. You gonna go there?
I think so.
Yeah,
either there and I'm gonna eat a lobster roll somewhere.
Sit at the old bar.
Perhaps
that's been there since like 1700 and something.
Something like that.
So anyway. Enjoy your vacation.
I think Chris Columbus ate there once. Maybe.
When you come back, it'll be the week of practice starting up.
Why you think I made it like that? Just a little last chance to get out before everything gets underway, and we have to start actually seeing who's on the field for Clemson at quarterback and who's on the field for South Carolina at places like safety and running back and wide receiver. And it's odd the way this week has gone. I know that people are very optimistic. You can answer me this. Did it seem like Will Muschamp had a little bit more swagger to you?
He came across the same way last year. And I think that's a direct reflection on how he feels about his team, Pro. I think a coach, when he gets up in front of the media and talks positively, it's because he thinks he's got a pretty good team. Last year, he kind of stole the show in Hoover. He was the funniest guy. He was the quickest witted guy up there, and the Gamecocks went out and won 9 games. I think it's the same thing now. I think he feels like he's going to go to war here with a pretty good team.
And plus, he was back in his home state. He was around his territory, some of his haunts when he was at the University of Georgia. So he felt comfortable to say, hey, we got media days and we're not in Alabama. Thank goodness.
Saw a tweet where, of course, it goes back to Hoover, and this tweet said that it's possible, maybe even likely, it's going to go to Dallas next, after Hoover next year.
Where's the SEC connection in Dallas?
College football playoff is probably that connection because that's their home base.
Uh-huh.
Why not Houston?
I'd say Houston makes more sense with College Station being right down the road. But then again, Houston's not exactly near anything else in the conference other than LSU and ancillarily Arkansas.
Well, I was told by somebody that they actually wanted to use the Mercedes-Benz Dome or Stadium, whatever they call it, to host it this year, but they couldn't get it together. They couldn't put it all together to do it in there this year. And in the future, when it comes back to Atlanta, that may be where it's going to be, inside the Mercedes-Benz.
Well, I hope to God they don't move it anywhere other than Charlotte for the ACC, because that was a fantastic setup. I know that people are very partial to the Grandover, what they do in Greensboro and the stuff at Pinehurst as well. But the Weston and the ACC, they could not have been better with their hospitality. They were fantastic.
Good stuff out of there. I think we had good stuff out of the SEC. And today, the SEC did release the results of the voting by the esteemed media. So esteemed, let's see, one person in the media voted Missouri to win the SEC championship.
Really?
One person in the media voted Mississippi State to win the championship.
By the way, how did they vote Missouri to win the championship without having in first place SEC vote? Did somebody from Missouri vote for Missouri, or somebody without a degree from Missouri vote for Missouri?
Well, in actuality, the way the ballot is set up, you pick the divisions, but then you have a separate vote for the champion.
But they make very clear in that voting, I saw this from somebody else, they make very, very clear in that voting that the person who is your champion has to be a winner of one of the two divisions. I don't know how that glitch could get through.
Well, because did Missouri get a first place vote to win the division?
They did not. They did not. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how they can get a first place vote to win. How they can not get a first place vote to win the East.
Yeah.
Yet somebody voted.
Somebody didn't follow the rules.
That's what I'm saying.
That's all. Somebody didn't follow the rules. USC got 4 votes for the SEC championships. Let's see who was there. The Big Spur was there.
Cloninger probably.
The state newspaper was there. Go Gamecocks. They were there. Gamecock Central was. Yeah, you can see where those votes came from.
I probably could pick out the exact 4 people who made those votes.
So here is the voting in the East. It's Georgia, then USC, which got 8 votes to win the East. Florida 3rd, Missouri 4th, Kentucky 5th, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. I went with Georgia, USC, Florida. And then I went with I think I went with Missouri 4th. No, or did I go with Kentucky 4th? I know I had the top 3 correct: Georgia, USC, and Florida. In the West, Alabama is picked to win by a wide margin over Auburn, then Mississippi State, Texas A&M, LSU, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Of course, Alabama picked to win the championship, 193 votes.
You had Missouri 4th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Georgia was picked 2nd, 69 votes, then Auburn, then USC, then Florida, then Mississippi State, then Missouri. As for the preseason all-SEC team from USC, wide receiver Deebo Samuel was named to the first team offense. In fact, he was mentioned a lot. Mm-hmm. Offensive lineman Zach Bailey was picked for the third team offense. And on the defensive side, surprisingly, no Gamecocks were picked. I would have thought maybe a TJ Brunson or a DJ Wanham would have popped up there. Specialists, Samuel was picked as return specialist and all-purpose player on the first team. On the second team, Joseph Carlton was picked for the punting spot. So that's the Gamecocks. As far as the quarterbacks go, first-team quarterback Drew Lock of Missouri.
No arguments there.
Second-team quarterback Jarrett Stidham of Auburn.
No arguments there.
Third-team quarterback Nick Fitzgerald, Mississippi State, and Jake Fromm of Georgia. They tied.
Interesting.
I picked Fitzgerald as my other quarterback. You have to pick 2 quarterbacks. I picked Fitzgerald and I picked Locke.
I believe one of us in the room had the second-team quarterback.
What's this?
Stidham?
I believe that was.
Well, I just asked him the question. How did you bypass Stidham?
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, Stidham is I saw Stidham get sacked 11 times by Clemson. I was not impressed. Now, he got better as the season went on.
Yeah, but no quarterback would have played well against Clemson's defense without knowing all the nuances of their offense. And that's what it was that night, because most of the sacks were quarterback driven. Why? Because he hesitated.
And it's weird because we make that same parallel when we talk about South Carolina's game against Georgia in week number 2, because of the fact that Georgia's going to come into a buzzsaw. Yes, you have a quarterback who has another year under his belt, but you do have the fact that South Carolina's defense is coming back with very stout numbers. All
right, we have got a great show for you here on a Friday. You think we're slacking off? Not here on Sports Talk, huh? Coming up in just a moment after the break, Will has a one-on-one interview with Andy Staples of Sports Illustrated. I think more of him as a basketball guy. Does he know his football pretty well?
He knows his football very well, and he is a very interesting food nugget there at the end as well, involving the state of South Carolina.
Imagine that.
He does a food vertical for Sports Illustrated as well as his football column.
Mike Morgan will be here at the bottom of the hour. Morgan on the move. We'll get his thoughts on media days. We'll have, you know what? I'm not sure we'll have any recruiting tonight.
What?
Just one of those nights.
What?
We'll hear
recruiting takes a vacation.
We'll hear up something.
We'll hear my.
Is it Christmas Day?
We'll hear my one-on-one with Marty Smith of ESPN. George will be here. We'll catch you up on the British Open. Kevin Kisner still has a share of the lead at the halfway point. Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR. Great show coming for you here on Sports Talk. We'll be right back.
Sports Talk continues from the ACC Media Kickoff 2018. We're pleased to be joined by Sports Illustrated's Andy Staples, who, of course, comes to us here live on Sports Talk. And, Andy, you know, Clemson obviously has dominated this conference over the course of the last couple of years. We always talk about this gap in reference to the Gamecocks, but as it comes to the conference, is the gap widening, closing, or stationary?
I think it's pretty stationary right now. That I think Florida State will be back to where Florida State should be within a year or so. Maybe this year. We'll see. I do think there's certain people, cough, cough, Cam Akers, cough, cough, who are really going to benefit from Willie Taggart's offense. But I do think Clemson, just particularly Clemson this year, because they got those defensive linemen back, and that was a bit of a surprise, is probably personnel-wise head and shoulders above everybody else, but they're head and shoulders above almost everyone in the country. Alabama and Ohio State, personnel-wise, are the only ones you'd even kind of put in the conversation.
And one of the things that Dabo said yesterday when we spoke with him at his golf tournament is that they're exploring maybe going to two quarterbacks, maybe playing Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence in particular sets, a la Chris Leak, Tim Tebow of Florida vintage.
That won't work.
It doesn't seem like that's something that's a foolproof method.
I had this question in my mailbag relative to Alabama, Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, and somebody asked me, can they do the Leak Tebow thing? And so I was a beat writer covering that Florida team. Leak Tebow only worked because it was a very specific set of circumstances. The true freshman was the better runner and therefore not necessary to run the whole offense, and he wasn't ready. Now, I think quarterbacks are much more prepared now to come in and play right away than they were 12 years ago. But when the guy who is the younger guy, and that would be Tua last year, Trevor Lawrence this year at Clemson, Deshaun Watson in 2014, when he's the better overall skill set guy with the better arm, well, you can put him in spot duty. But let's say last year, Alabama had made Tua a spot duty guy instead of just a pure backup. So instead of garbage time, he's coming in the first time they have a 3rd and long. He starts throwing laser beams for first downs. Guess what? Jalen Hurts isn't starting anymore. The only reason the Leak Tebow thing worked is because Tebow would come in when they needed a 4th and 1, and then Leak just comes back in and runs the offense. It was not going to be that way with Tua and Jalen. It will not be that way with Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. And if they go series by series, I am curious how much does 2014 inform Dabo Swinney, because let's go back to that Georgia game in 2014. Deshaun Watson's first series, you're like, okay, he's good. We get it.
Next two.
That's all right. Fresh.
Exactly.
But 2 weeks later in Tallahassee, if you start Deshaun Watson, you win the game and you win the ACC. And that's something I think that may be on their minds. Maybe they felt like, because, and I don't blame them for the way they handled 2014, because they knew they had somebody special. And you have to be very careful with a young quarterback, because you don't want to break his confidence. You don't want to put him in too early when he's not ready. So I understand what they were thinking when they did it. But some guys who are just special are just special. And they're ready. And Deshaun Watson, it wouldn't have mattered. You could have put him in, started him against Georgia. He would have been fine, and he would have rolled on. Some quarterbacks aren't like that. Trevor Lawrence, we'll see. But I think if you feel like Trevor Lawrence has the higher upside, play Trevor Lawrence.
Andy Staples joining us, Sports Illustrated here on Sports Talk. The games for Clemson seem manageable. The road contest at Boston College is certainly something to look at. The road contest at Florida State, they played Duke and Georgia Tech out of the division. Who should scare Clemson in your mind other than themselves?
Well, Florida State still. Listen, Florida State didn't suddenly get bad players. One bad year did not change the fact that they recruited well for basically the entirety of Jimbo Fisher's tenure there, maybe with the exception of his last year there. And I thought Willie Taggart did a pretty good job salvaging that class when he got there. So, they've got athletes that can match up with Clemson. And you saw last year. That was not a good Florida State team, but that game was very much in doubt for most of the game. And so I do think, and that's going to be an interesting game, because Clemson doesn't always see teams that are going to try to run at a similar pace. Syracuse obviously tries to run at a similar pace or a faster pace in their division. Florida State's going to go at a very fast pace. So their offense is actually very similar to what Dino Babers runs at Syracuse. Basically, when Willie Taggart was at USF in 2015, they were about to lose their jobs. He had to scrap his offense, and he's a pure West Coast offense guy, third Harbaugh brother, all that stuff. They had some guys that had gone to Baylor, and they learned a little bit about that offense. So they took pieces of that offense and married them with the West Coast offense, which is what they still use in the run game. And guess what? It's tough to stop.
The college football playoff, John Swafford was talking about their success in the playoff. A lot of that's due to Clemson because they've been there. Mm-hmm. And, SEC's got their success because of not only Alabama but also Georgia. Is it a bad thing for the ACC to have their success so solely tied to one team? Does there need to be another team that emerges?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Clemson has reached the point where if a team can beat Clemson, they're going to make the playoff.
True.
So I don't think it's a problem. Darth Vaders are always good. Every sport, every league needs a Darth Vader. There has to be that thing everybody's shooting for. You don't want a mishmash at the top. I mean, how long did the ACC have during Florida State's lost decade? Who was the class of the ACC? I guess it was Virginia Tech.
Possibly.
But they weren't nationally elite those years. And that was the problem. And the conference suffered because of it. You need that Darth Vader type program. And the thing about it is when you have Miami, when you have Florida State, when you have Virginia Tech, somebody's always going to be working and getting closer to the ones at the top. Clemson's, Dabo Swinney's program is such that it can sustain for a long, long time. They can be nationally elite, national title contender, playoff contender for years. But the good news is because Florida State's chasing them right now, because Virginia Tech's chasing them right now, because Miami's chasing them, it's going to make those teams better too.
So I have to ask you this one on the way out because I know that you, in addition to your great college football writing, your food vertical at Sports Illustrated is massively popular, yours truly included. If your last meal had to come in the state of South Carolina, where?
This is a great question. Well, the Smoking Pig in Pendleton,
very good,
is up
very
there.
Strong.
Is up there. You've got all the stuff down in Charleston, but so I hope. But I'm going to go with a different one. I hope my final day is a Friday or a Saturday because that's the only days that this place is open. Mm-hmm. Sweatman's Barbecue in Holly Hill.
Wow, very strong.
All whole hog, and I know Rodney Scott's place up near Myrtle Beach is unbelievable. The whole vibe at Sweatman's is crazy. All whole hog. They put it out on a buffet. There's hash and rice. It's so funny because there's one state in America where if I say hash and rice, they know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Everybody's like, "What do you mean corned beef hash?" No. No, good. the thing you have a pot of and you sit there stirring it all night, and then you dump it over rice.
When my father first saw South Carolina hash, he was mystified. And he's from the north, so he had no idea what the heck this was. Well,
but how did he feel once he ate it?
He liked it.
Yes.
He was very much in favor.
It's the best barbecue side there is. And it's Brunswick stew is probably a close second, but which you can also get down that way, but not at Sweatman's. Sweatman's is the stuff off the pig. So you the pulled pork, they'll take the ribs out and they'll put the ribs on the buffet. You got the hash and rice, and then you got the skins. That's the whole deal. It's like $8. But if you want, you can pay like 75 cents for a cup of banana pudding.
That's pretty good. Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated. Thanks so much for the time.
My pleasure.
That's Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated. Catch him at si.com. We'll come back and have more coverage for you of ACC and SEC Media Days and Media Week here on Sports Talk and South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Did you agree with Andy Staples' characterization of Sweatman's barbecue?
Never been. Kind of hoping he would mention Schuler's barbecue outside of Latta. That's a great spot.
I don't think Andy's been to Latta before.
Well, he needs to get his big butt over there and check it out.
Mike Morgan joins us now. He joins us, of course, as he does weekly, and he's brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, the mortgage team more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. FoundersFCU.com/mortgage, and by BP Skinner Clothiers, the best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you. Located in Columbia, in the Vista, or anywhere you can be. Brent will come to you. BPSkinnerClothiers.com to set up an appointment.
Yeah, I was talking to some people, not Mike Morgan, who I never saw at SEC Media Days. Did you not make your way into the main media room while you were there, if you were there?
I was there days 2 and 3. I spent very little time on Radio Row. But, yeah, I saw the big room. I saw you walking around. You're such a celebrity, Corn. I feel
I would have made time for you, Mike. I would have made time for you.
I thought you were staying at my house. I thought that's I know you're too cheap to pay for a hotel. So
wow.
Well, I did. That wasn't your house I was staying at. I was
maybe the basement. I don't know.
I was coming in late and leaving early. I thought it was your place, but
I thought that was a rodent problem that I've had. We have a creep back there. I couldn't tell if that was rats or cornbread.
Time to change the locks, Mike.
I did talk to some people besides of you, of course, who go to BP Skinner Clothiers in Columbia. Apparently, it's becoming a very popular stop among the ESPN media corps.
Among the ESPN, I know Marty Smith.
Bingo.
He's a Brent Skinner guy. I know. I don't want to mention their names because I don't know how legal or whatever that might be, but there are a couple of Gamecock coaches that shop there. Might have even, some former Gamecock players, Marcus Lattimore being one. I'm just saying, a lot of people know the word is out. Brent Skinner's the man.
Absolutely.
Sean Jeffrey, I think, is another one I want to say.
Yes, you are correct. You are correct.
Let's go to the results from the media voting today for the preseason All-SEC team and the preseason predictions for how the divisions and the championship will play out. And I don't know, nothing real surprising, I would say, as far as what the media predicts for the two divisions.
No, not really. Last year at this time, I thought there were only 3 teams that had a chance to really win their respective divisions and or the SEC. And that was Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia. And this year, I think for me and most of the other media members, that's the same. Now, the fact that Carolina edged Florida for second, that might come as a surprise to some. I don't think it's that big of a surprise. I tell you what it does do is that you can't, if you're a fan back in South Carolina, you can't play the we don't get any respect card anymore. South Carolina's getting plenty of respect, plenty of love. When I wasn't there, I watched a lot of the coverage on the SEC network. And I heard nothing but praise for Bentley, for Debo, for Will Muschamp, and for the program as a whole. It's amazing, really, the dark cloud that was over that program just 2 years ago, how quickly it has changed and how quickly the perception of where Carolina football has changed. So I think that was maybe a mild surprise because a lot of people still think that Dan Mullen can turn Felipe Franks into a competent quarterback, and if so, they still have a lot of athletes in Gainesville. But outside of that, look, it's the same. It's the rich staying rich, and everybody else fighting in that 4 through 8 or 9 middle. That we're all just trying to figure out who's going to be what in terms of that. Is Mississippi State going to be as good as a lot of people want to believe? Will Jimbo Fisher be a huge impact in year 1 at Texas A&M, which has been a perennial underachiever? I think that is those are 2 of the big storylines coming into this year.
Well, I think the one thing about Gamecock fans, Mike, you have to train them out of their skepticism of the national media and the national narrative, because despite all that respect, all I hear from Gamecock fans today is the fact that, we only had 3 people on the SEC all-conference lists, and that, where's Brian Edwards on the list? Where's DJ Wanham? Where's TJ Brunson? In my mind, many of those guys, if you're asking for them to be on those lists, you're doing so on potential. If you're going by where they are, I think that the selections are warranted.
Yeah, I don't think there was much controversy there. And honestly, at the end of the year, nobody remembers who voted for what at the beginning of the year. Nobody cares. It's going to be the proof always comes out at the end of the season, and that's when we really care who actually is on the first team, second team, and we can, get argumentative and get all upset about something. Then to argue about a preseason team, look, honestly, I've been to a number of SEC media days, and I filled out those ballots a time or two, and I would say, a good amount of effort. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I put maximum effort. I didn't do a ton of research once I got to the second team all conference list. Very typically, those votes are provincial. People vote for who they know. People vote for the schools they cover. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into that. Like I said, I do put a little more stock into the fact that with all those votes that were tabulated, the fact that Carolina was picked second, I thought that said, again, that there's more respect for Carolina than maybe a lot of people in South Carolina actually think.
Well, you think about the respect card, if I may. When you look at a Will Muschamp maybe 10 or 15 years ago, one of the bright, young, up-and-coming coaches, and then the coach in waiting at the University of Texas. He goes to Florida and boom, mud thrown all over his reputation. The respect for South Carolina, does that go hand in hand with what I seem to see is more and more respect that Will Muschamp has repaired his reputation?
I think it's easy to forget, Pro, that when that hire was made, there were a lot of local fans and perhaps media that scoffed at it. And nationally, I think a lot of people took it as an opportunity to take some shots at Will Muschamp and at the hire itself. Because it's just so unusual for us to see a guy who admittedly did not work out at Florida get another chance so quickly. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, wait a minute now. It didn't work out at 4 years at Florida. Surely he can never be successful anywhere again. I mean, that's how quick we are to make a judgment on coach, which for the most part, Will Muschamp is just that, a young head coach. I've always thought that's a pretty silly way to look at it. I do believe you learn a lot. I know Will learned a lot from those years in Gainesville. And guess what? Outside of Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer, Gainesville has had 100 years of pretty mediocre football when you look right into the record books. It's not as if everybody goes to Gainesville. It comes up roses. Ask Ron Zook. Ask Jim McElwain. It's not that easy a job, folks. And he had a year, I think it was year 2, where they won 9 games. Looked like they were on their way. Jeff Driscoll never panned out. Jake Bentley needs to pan out this year. I think he took a little bit of a step back last year from what I thought he would be. I think he needs to play like an all-SEC quarterback if they're going to match 9 wins again.
Mike Morgan on the move. Final minute here. News out of Clemson yesterday. The new contract for Brent Venables, pushing his salary to about $2.3 million a year with everything thrown in. Richest annual salary in history for an assistant football coach. What does this mean for assistant football coaching salaries moving forward? And what do you think about Clemson taking that step with a 5-year contract to secure him?
It means that every high-profile coordinator in America just became a huge fan of Will Venables and his agent and Clemson. That is exactly what you want to see. That is a trend moving forward, and I certainly believe it is. The market value for a play-calling coordinator, particularly when you have a head coach that has no background on that side of the football, is immense. And when you are a perennial power, as Clemson has become, to use a line in the movie Rounders, pay that man his money. Give him what he wants. Give him what he needs. Keep him happy and keep the success rolling.
Or as they said in A Few Good Men, you need me on that wall.
Yes, you want me on that wall.
You can only quote like 3 movies.
It's my favorite movie. Mike, Have a great weekend. I hope to see you at Media Days next year.
I appreciate it, Lieutenant Weinberg.
We'll be right back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Willie P. Corn and the Pro. I wanted to ask you this, Corn, because we were talking about Muschamp with Mike, and it almost stands to reason with South Carolina and the way that they have had the success under Muschamp, and this his second coming, if you will. It almost maybe it can be a cautionary tale or a case study on failed first-time head coaches, and maybe give some more of these guys who might have failed one time or two another chance instead of trying to repopulate or populate the coaching market with first-time guys.
No, not necessarily, because I think some coaches who fail their first time out fail because they're not cut out to be head coaches. They're very good coordinators, very good assistants. Not everybody is cut out to be a great head coach. It takes
the Peter principle. Every man rises to the level of mediocrity. So they rise to be head coach and they figure it out.
So, in the case of Muschamp, he's fortunate that circumstances played out for him, that he was able to, first of all, land a high-profile coordinator job right off the bat, as you knew he would. Remember, this guy was the hottest thing among assistant coaches. He was the Brent Venables of his time. Coach in waiting at Texas, highly paid, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody wanted him, and he took his time, and he got the Florida job, which was a great gig. As somebody was telling me at SEC Media Days and talking about him, who covers Florida, we're talking about the fit between Florida and South Carolina, and they said, South Carolina just seems like a better fit for Muschamp than Florida. I don't exactly know what that means when you talk about fit. I mean, it's football. It's the SEC. Maybe, Mike's exactly right, except for the Spurrier era and the era of Urban Meyer. Florida football has been mired in mediocrity for practically its entire existence.
That's because they stayed on probation all the time.
Good bit of the time, but still, they're not like Alabama and Michigan and people like that who have a long storied history. Now, they've been very good, of course, in the last couple of decades, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. He bounced to Auburn. The South Carolina situation opened up. He convinced Ray Tanner that he was the right man for the job at the right time. And I think that given this second lifeline, he's a guy that's very loyal to South Carolina and loyal to Ray Tanner. And as much as any head football coach that I've seen at South Carolina in my time, he has thrown himself into the job deeper than any of the others because he's involved in all the planning stages. He's involved in, of course, the recruiting. He is his own recruiting coordinator, and he takes that very seriously. And he made an interesting comment yesterday, and that is he realized as a coach, you have to coach to your strengths. And his strengths, as he stated it, he says, I'm a good defensive coach, I'm a good special teams coach, and I'm a good recruiter. You notice he left out offense.
Right.
And so I think he's learned, get good offensive people, let them run the offense, and then I focus on what I'm strong at.
One of his favorite sayings is one man's misfortune is another man's opportunity. Well, I think out of his misfortune at Florida, he has created another opportunity, and I think he could create opportunities for others by showing the way that, hey, if a guy fails at one place, he could be successful at another given the opportunity.
The one thing that shocked me after his hire was how quickly he put together that a staff that no football follower or other coach would have said, he got him, he hired him, he got him. So apparently he was really networking while he was coaching, because if you got those guys who seem to all be very talented coaches to come join you when you failed at Florida and come to South Carolina, where the people think they never win, he's got something going.
Well, the coaching staff is usually made up of connected people.
Right. Exactly.
So you look at his staff. I mean, he and McClendon go back to the Georgia days. He and T-Rob go back to the Auburn and Florida days, I believe. I mean, look, he's been coaching a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And he's had high-profile positions, and he's worked for high-profile coaches. You work for Saban, you work for Mac Brown in particular. You're going to make a lot of friends. You're going to make a lot of connections. And then, you go back and you reach out to those guys when the time comes. I mean, that's why he hired when he put his staff together, he hired Roper to be his offensive coordinator. He was his coordinator for a season down at Florida, and they actually did pretty well offensively that one season, and he thought it would carry over to Columbia, but for whatever reason, offensively, they failed the last 2 years. There should be no failure on offense this year. I mean, a team that averaged 21 points per game last year, 22 points per game, and of course, I said this the same time last year, they should average 30 to 35 points per game.
We'll see if that
with the talent that they have. Well, show me where they're going to come up short. Why would they come up short on offense? He believes in McClendon as a play caller. He believes in Dan Werner as the whisperer in the ear of the play caller and the quarterback. You have an old offense. I mean, when I say old, the players are old. There's not a youngster in the bunch now. They're juniors, they're seniors, they're fifth-year guys. They have grown old together, and that makes for a good offense if you have talent. And I look at them and I see two all-SEC caliber offensive linemen in Bailey and Stanley, a potential all-SEC quarterback, two potential all-SEC receivers in Edwards and Debo, and, of course, Debo helping in many other ways, and not great, but good running backs, not necessarily great at this point, an excellent punter who you hope you don't have to use a lot, a place-kicking game that's still a question mark.
You only have 4 teams last year in the SEC, at least among the conference numbers. She's using the conference versus conference numbers. Only 4 out of the 14 had more than 30 points per contest. That's a hard plateau to reach.
True that, but still, look at South Carolina under Spurrier. What did they average?
Probably around that.
Yeah,
I'm not,
in the 30s. So it can be done when you have a Connor Shaw and the weapons that he had, or a Steven Garcia for his short time and the weapons that he had.
I'm saying it
can be done.
I still have to see more from Jake Bentley. I really do.
Well, I think this is his money year.
It's his prove it year. This is very much his prove it year.
As I said, if number 1 had been healthy last year, we may not be having this conversation.
Absolutely. All right, I do have a recruiting note.
A
recruiting. Well, look, recruiting is taking a nap right now. You know, the good thing about next week when practice starts is that these people will get off of Twitter and get on the field. I'm tired of reading about how good you are, how well you dress, what a dancer you are, how cool you are. I'm ready for you to go prove it on the football field where the stars that you've been granted this summer, they don't mean anything when that guy hits you in the mouth. But in basketball, the one note we have is USC offered 2021 6'4" Trevor Keels of
Fairfax, Virginia, Paul VI High School.
He also has a Wake Forest offer. So is it any good?
I have no idea.
Paul VI? Is that a good basketball program?
It's a very good basketball
program. It's
an
upgrade on Paul V.
It is an upgrade on Paul V. WCAC, same league as DeMatha, Good Counsel, O'Connell, all those schools.
And this, you know this because?
I was there.
And because they recruit.
And because they recruit. Yes. They bust the kids in from Maryland.
Do they really?
Yes. It's very much a thing.
Okay.
But they all do that.
That is recruiting. For now, we'll get back on it on Sunday night, Monday, and get back into the recruiting stuff. Just thinking about what's coming up in recruiting while we're talking about it. Clemson, the end of next week, is going to have their all-in barbecue, so they'll have some of their top people there. I would keep an eye on Levante Bentley. How about another Bentley in the state? Levante Bentley out of Alabama.
No relation?
I don't think so. Okay. But he may be chasing Jake Bentley in another year or so. But anyway, he'll be coming in. He's very strong on Clemson. Wouldn't be surprised if he were to commit to Clemson on that visit or soon thereafter. Wouldn't be surprised if Clemson didn't get commitments too far down the road from Andrew Booth, Jalen Phillips, defensive backs out of Lawrenceville, Archer High School, and their other teammate, Wooden, the defensive end, who's down to Clemson and Auburn. That could happen sooner than later. So Clemson's got several on the hook that they're looking to reel in. South Carolina, I don't believe, is planning anything big for next week. They may have some unofficial visits and that sort of thing.
Maybe some Will Muschamp rides along Lake Murray in his jet ski.
That's entirely possible, I guess. So we'll keep a close watch out on that for you as well. All right, top of the hour break here on Sports Talk. A busy second hour. We'll update the Open and more. We'll be back.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Good to have you with us here on a Friday night. We wrap up a very busy week, catch our breath over the weekend, come back next week. NFL camps will be opening up. College coaches will be putting the final touches on maybe a little relaxation. Recruiting season will open back up again. We'll have a live period for a little bit. And the week after that, we're into college football practice all around the country. Right now, though, it's time to talk some birdies and bogeys here in South Carolina and across the pond. Let me update what's happening in the Open, where South Carolina's own Kevin Kisner holds on to a share of the lead with two-time major winner Zach Johnson. They are at 6 under. Tommy Fleetwood and Pat Perez, along with Xander Schauffele, they are at 5 under. And Rory McIlroy, Eric Van Rooyen, Matt Kuchar, Tony Finau, Xander Lombard, they are all at 4 under par. The cut came in at +3. Some other scorers, Rory McIlroy, I mentioned Roy, 4 under. Matt Kuchar, 4 under. Jordan Spieth, 3 under. Kyle Stanley is in at 1 under. Tiger Woods is going to be around for the weekend after a pair of 71s. He's even, as is Phil Mickelson, who shoots a 69. Sergio misses the cut at +4, as does Keimer. Dustin Johnson misses the cut at +6 after 72 today. Bubba Watson, +6 after 73. Russell Henley's headed home at +7. And there you go with some of the familiar names as we welcome in a familiar name, George Bryan III. So what's your take on 2 rounds of the Open thus far?
Absolutely spectacular. And just watching makes me want to go play golf. The idea is to get up early and you can start your day watching. I think that's just pure golf. And I don't know what in the heck happened, how these architects got other ideas that there could be other ways to do a golf course, but that is absolutely pure. And I know Canussi is one of the hardest over there, but the way it looks and the way it plays is just way different. And if you hadn't been over, it's a must trip. Put it on the list, man, the bucket list.
So you're not mad at the Royal and Ancient for how they've set this course up?
No, it's just, it looks to me, I've actually played one of the courses on the rotation and Troon, and they just let the golf course be what it is. That golf course doesn't play a lot different the other days of the year. It's just pure golf. They don't have a lot. Just they built those courses with mules and by hand. They just took advantage of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Real simple.
And typically the Open depends a lot on the weather conditions, and when it's calm, then there's going to be good scoring, and I guess that's been the case. What about Kevin Kisner? Finished up with a double bogey today, but still he's got a share of the lead at the halfway point. Does he have enough, you think, to hang on through the weekend?
Oh, absolutely. This is a young man who believes he can, and in situation, he's already been there. At the PGA, at a golf course not suited for him necessarily. He was tough. He right there on the last day, last group. But it's pretty neat. I've had the chance to. Wesley got paired with a number of the folks in contention, including Finau. I'll tell you what, you got to watch out for him. And I'm just throwing it out. Kevin Chappell. The disadvantage these guys have teeing off late is typically the wind will be up. So those folks that are 6, 7, 8 shots back still have a chance, and a solid chance. Tiger Woods at even par, Phil Mickelson, these guys truly have a chance to win this tournament. It's not like it's a way outside. It's not like they're 5 touchdowns back at the half.
I have no qualm with the way that the Kisner played his round, other than shooting into the berm on 18 today, GB. But the guy I'm kind of looking at is Tommy Fleetwood. I think he's a guy who's had top 5s in 2 of his last 5 majors, including a runner-up finish at the U.S. Open earlier this year. It seems to me like he is starting to kind of find it when it comes down to these majors.
I'm glad you got to him first. if I were to look at one player, if one could get by Zach and Kevin both. I watched Zach last week for the first 36 holes. Zach Johnson is game on. And Wesley got paired with him a couple other times. Zach's actually been playing extremely good for a long time. I think he's going to be tough. Those two guys could battle it out to the very end, but I think it's a beautiful setup. Fleetwood's got the game. He's obviously he's that new breed of player too, and no fear and just rips it. He's fun to watch. I agree with you. I like that pick.
And had the only birdie free round on the card today.
A guy that
that's crazy.
A guy we thought really was going to just take the tour by storm and still got a chance, very, very young still, is a guy that would truly love to win at Carnoustie, and that's McIlroy. What is his chances, do you think?
Oh, they are solid. And I heard some of the commentators speaking about his mentality or his attitude. I had a chance. I sat down at a meal table with him at Hartford a couple of weeks ago, and he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder. I actually think he could easily win the tournament, and I think it's a great leaderboard. Spectacular. McIlroy looks like he's swinging better than he has in quite a while, so wouldn't surprise me at all, and he's fun to watch too.
GB3 with us here on Sports Talk. So with the Open going on across the oceans there, what is Wesley doing this weekend? When's his next start?
He's actually in Barbasol in Lexington, Kentucky, doing what everybody else is, watching the Open.
Mm-hmm. How's he stand? I was trying to find the leaderboard.
He's at even right now, tied for 64th.
Oh, good.
Yeah, well, he's 3 under for the tournament, even for the day, but I don't think that – it's my guess that they may not play that event. They all might get to sit there and watch the British Open, which I think it's a bit of a shame. Lexington, Kentucky, up there, what a beautiful the horses and basketball do not get in front of. Excuse me, golf will not be in front of horses and basketball there, and of course bourbon. I mean, it's big. Those basketball, bourbon, and horses. Golf's in fourth place hitting cleanup there, but I was sad to see the weather. I was watching Lipscomb. There's a LPGA Tour star in the event, with great interest, and it looked like she was getting ready to go, but I think she's watching the Open too.
That didn't go real well the first time they tried that. You might remember out in Texas. She played in one of the tournaments in Texas and didn't do real well, as I recall.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I could weigh in. I hadn't really thought that much about the women playing in the men's and then the men's playing in the women's, although I hadn't seen that happen. I don't know why it couldn't. I mean, if the women playing the men's, why not?
Yeah.
And that could help the women's golf out. You never can tell. I did get paired. Susie Ellison back in about 1981 or 2 played in the men's city amateur, and I got paired with Susie, and she was on the Gamecock golf team at the time. And I'll tell you what was fun is the TV cameras and all came out, and I've never been so nervous in all my life.
Why?
Well, but I was pretty sure that if I was in no win situation, and I know she was nervous too to get beat. First of all, you never want to get beat by a girl if you're a guy in a man's tournament. And then on the other hand,
that's old. Hey, that is old school thinking. Today, that's perfectly okay.
But he said it was 81, so.
Hey, I think she's the first to ever do anything like that.
Yeah.
So all the guys were razzing me, going, "You're going to get beat by the girl," and I got to tell you, it was in my head, so I was nervous.
Well, I mean, she's only won like what, a half dozen city championships or something?
Yeah, she really can play. And by the way, we grew into golf together. We had a great time. But the girls feel a lot of pressure on that. And I got to recognize Carolina's girls were victorious over the Virginia girls at the Sea Pines members course this past week. And congratulations to the Carolinas girls.
That's great. Always like to see the in-staters do well. George, we thank you. Enjoy the Open over the weekend. Catch you next week.
Next week.
George Bryan III, Birdies and Bogeys here on Sports Talk. Back we are on Sports Talk. Let's continue with more of our good stuff from SEC Media Days. I had a chance to talk with ESPN's Marty Smith one-on-one, well-known here in the state of South Carolina. The first thing we talked about is a new venture he's involved with the SEC Network and Academy Outdoors and Sports.
It's super cool. Academy Sports and Outdoors signed on to be the official sports retailer of the Southeastern Conference and with ESPN. And as part of that, I'm going to be doing a series of outdoors pieces. We'll go bass fishing, we'll go red fishing, we'll go bow hunting, and really show the passion that the Southeast has for being outdoors. And those pieces are going to air on SEC Nation on Saturdays. And I grew up on a farm, man. I grew up hunting and fishing. I have tremendous passion for it. And as my personal and professional lives have gotten busier and busier and busier, I haven't had enough time. It's wonderful now that I'm going to be able to do it and meld it with my professional life. And I'm going to bring my son too. Yeah. So it's the coolest initiative, and I'm just so humbled to be a part of it.
That sounds great. Are you more of a fisherman? Or are you more of a hunter? What do you prefer?
I love fishing. Fishing's so fun, and just to be out on the boat with your buddies. And it's going to be different too with Academy Sports and Outdoors, because I'm going to be paired with professionals. I'm going to be paired with experts from whom I can learn. And I love that. One of my favorite pieces I've ever done at ESPN, I went and did a story in Oklahoma City with Paul George, the Thunder player. And he grew up fishing with his dad. And we got to talking about fathers and sons and being out on the water and what it means. And I was like, so if your dad, if you score 40 points against the Lakers or you catch a trophy bass, which one of those Instagram posts is your father more impressed with? He's like to fish every day, all day long. But his dad wears them out with photographs. So it's just fun. And I can't wait to get started and show everyone these pieces.
Will SEC personalities be involved with this too?
Some, I hope. Since they're going to air on SEC Network, I'm sure I'm going to be able to hit up some guys and say, hey, we're going to go fishing here. You guys want to join us? That's a difficult thing to say no to. But again, I'm so passionate about the outdoors, and to be able to partner with somebody like Academy Sports and Outdoors to tell about that passion, it's a dream.
Now, Muschamp lives on Lake Murray, loves to go fishing out there, loves to take his players out there. You think you can get something involved with him?
Don't think I won't drag Will out there. He's awesome. I just appreciate him so much, and I feel like he's really found himself at South Carolina. I can see a comfort level that's not complacent, and that's not easy to do. It's hard to be comfortable without being complacent. He knows he still has a big job to do and a lot of work to do, but the gains he's made and the improvements that he's made in that program over the past couple of years is very impressive. So, yes, I'm going to wear Will out and tell him I want to be on his boat on the lake with his cold beer.
He's got a big boat, no question about it. So let me ask you about the Gamecock football team since we're on the subject. Do you see them as a legitimate threat to Georgia in the East?
Georgia's really good, man. I think they're far and away the favorite in the East. But Will's getting some players. And Bentley, quarterback position is the most important position and on a lot of levels, and there's a lot of layers there. But Bentley is a very smart player. He's a very talented player, throws it really well, and now he's seasoned. And all of those things add up to potentially having a great year. And I still think that Georgia's the class. Florida's going to be better as well. Tennessee has so much work to do. But I think South Carolina is going to be in the upper echelon in the East and have an opportunity to knock off a couple of those teams who are elite because I think they're going to be well prepared.
Shift gears to the ACC. Clemson, obviously the king there. You see the Tigers back in the playoffs. And what do you foresee happening in the quarterback derby there, if there is indeed a derby?
Trevor Lawrence is a great football player. Kelly had a great year last year. He's a great football player. But I feel like Lawrence is a transcendent talent. So it remains to be seen, of course, what the coaching staff there decides once we get into fall camp here. But I know that Trevor Lawrence can stretch the football field. And in today's college football, that's important. They're elite. They have the best defensive line in the country. All those guys decided to come back to school. I'm shocked by that decision. But when you look at how great they all are, they're going to be so nasty. Their linebacking core, of course, they're losing Dorian O'Daniel, who's a great player, but they're going to be really good at linebacker, and they're always good in the back end. So what Brent has there at his disposal is going to be nasty for opposing offenses too. I just marvel at what they're doing. It's such a unique culture at Clemson that is unlike anywhere else I've been. And Dabo's authenticity is resonant, and it matters, and the kids just love him. And so they're not done winning. I do expect them to win the league and be back in the playoff.
You want to go fishing with Dabo? Does he fish?
I don't know if he fishes or not, but I should find out. I know he has a boat on the lake. I'm calling you, man. Let's go fishing.
Do you see anybody else in the ACC who can rise up and give Clemson a run?
I think there's a couple of teams who it'll be really good. It'll be really interesting to see what Willie Taggart does down in Tallahassee. They have great talent. Now, their quarterback situation is interesting, of course. DeAndre Francois goes out against Alabama at the beginning of last season. Blackman comes in, and for an 18-year-old young man who got hit a lot, he got hit a lot. He played very well. And I interviewed Willie Taggart a couple weeks ago on the Marty Smith's America podcast. That is a plug. South Carolina, go download it. And I was impressed with his demeanor. And Taggart is basically like a Harbaugh descendant. Jack Harbaugh is almost like his father. Jim and John are like his brothers. And so he took so much of his philosophy from them. So I think he's going to get players. I think they have a really good chance to make some noise. But, man, when I look at the league, I feel like Clemson is just really, really good.
So are we looking at basically the same 4 or 5 teams competing for the spots in the semifinals?
Someone asked me last night at dinner about dark horses in the playoff, and I said West Virginia. I think the Mountaineers have a legitimate chance because Will Grier is so good. I mean, he's seasoned. He could have gone pro last year, chose to come back for another round. I think Dana Holgerson's an underrated talent as a head coach. His receiving core might be the best in the country, and their defense is pretty good. And, you know, in the Big 12, if you even halfway acceptable defense, you're going to have a chance to win because they sling it all over the pond in that league. I think the Mountaineers have a chance. Now, outside of that, yes. To answer your question, I think Alabama, I think it's going to be the same 8 or 10 teams that we talk about all year, every year. And I marvel at the fact that these coaches continually are able to reload, because what Saban loses every year is just crazy, and he always manages to reload. Same with Dabo now, and Will's starting to get great players. Urban Meyer always has great players. He needs to figure out what his quarterback situation is. Joe Burrow leaves him, and now he's in Baton Rouge at LSU. It's just a unique time in college football, but I think that the teams we've seen winning will continue to.
All right, one last shameless plug about the new TV show on SEC Network and when it begins and the title.
Well, 2 things that I will plug. First, yes, the Academy Sports and Outdoors pieces will begin at the beginning of the football season. They're going to air all year long on SEC Network and SEC Nation. And we're just going to go out hunting, fishing, and showing the passion for the outdoors that I have, that their other partners have, that they have. And it's such a massive part of their business. If you look at their footprint is the Southeastern Conference. It is Charlotte, North Carolina, to Florida, to Texas. That's where their stores are. And they have such great passion for it. It's a major part of their business. And so it just makes too much sense. So we're thrilled to get to do it. And then also what I'm doing here at SEC Media Days, we're interviewing all the coaches. Myself and Ryan McGee, with whom I have a radio show every Saturday morning on ESPN, are interviewing all these coaches for 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and they're turning that into 2 shows, an SEC East show and an SEC West show. And we don't care about ball. We're talking about life and the human element with these guys. And, brother, it's fascinating what they're saying. So check it out, and thank you for letting me just go on and on and on and on and on and on.
And he would have gone on and on and on and on and on if we didn't have to wrap it up. Good guy, Marty Smith. Enjoyed talking to him. Check out his stuff on SEC Nation. Should be some really good television there for you.
You didn't ask him about his shampoo or what he uses to keep his hair standing up.
That's a personal thing I care not to get into. But Monty Dutton's got good hair, and we'll talk with him about racing coming up.
Does he?
Does
he?
The latest on this weekend's race is around the corner. The full Monty on NASCAR is next. This is Sports Talk.
Football and NASCAR. What a marriage here on Sports Talk. As we go racing up in New Hampshire, we welcome into Sports Talk for the full Monty on NASCAR. Monty Dutton of MontyDutton.com fame. Kurt Busch wins the pole at 133.591.
They should just rename it the Busch Pole. Oh, wait, they already do.
Martin Truex Jr. second. Then Kyle Busch third, Denny Hamlin fourth, and Ryan Blaney fifth. It's been a little while since I last talked to you, Monty. Has Jimmy Johnson retired from racing? Did that happen while I was gone?
No, he's there. He's making laps.
He is making laps. I thought that is something I thought I'd never hear somebody say about Jimmy Johnson, that he's just out there making laps.
Well, you know, it's interesting that I don't know if this is true. This is just something that I was told. But I've been told that, you know, Earnhardt Jr. retired, and they've replaced. They have, you know, young drivers. Johnson is the only driver at Hendrick Motorsports that has much experience, and it's been pointed out to me that apparently some are of the opinion that Rick Hendrick has shaved. Now get this. $40 million from his budget. Mm-hmm. And there have been a lot of people besides drivers. For instance, the former motorsports director for General Motors, Doug Ducart, left Hendrick and now works for Ganassi. Well, who's got the best Chevrolet team right now? Chip Ganassi. That's who Kyle Larson drives for. So, you know, that could be part of it, but I'm sure that Hendrick didn't make all those moves to lose races. But I think that maybe you might say that the austerity has had worse effects than he could have anticipated.
Do you think the transition to the Camaro has really stifled the Chevy teams this year? They just don't have a handle on it yet?
Well, I don't think there's any question that's true. I mean, they haven't won a race since the Daytona 500. You know, they've come close, but I mean, Larson has been competitive on occasion. Chase Elliott has, but since for most of the last quarter century, Chevrolets have been the dominant maker in NASCAR. It is unusual to see them with one victory after the first half of the season.
You guys, this is what I hated being away, because you guys had two tremendous finishes to talk about.
Yes,
the two races while I was gone, and then this past Sunday was a blowout by Truex. So I hated the fact that I missed the real close races with you, Monty, but we had two races there that looked like old-time NASCAR that had to have NASCAR fans up on their feet and clamoring for more. Give me more of that.
Well, I've been sort of manic depressive because I really was pretty fired up because of the Chicagoland race on an intermediate track where everybody says, oh, they're all snoozers. It was a marvelous race. And I thought, okay, things were starting to click. Then you go to Daytona, and I think the third factor is I think that NBC taking over gave us Florida boost. I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. being in the television booth did. And then I just looked at one of my former colleagues, Jeff Gluck, has a website, and he runs a poll every week on rating the races. And the race at Kentucky was rated dead last of the season. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like, after watching that, you know, on Saturday night, I just all of a sudden, you know, felt like, oh, it's all gone to hell again. So,
well, you know, you put something on Saturday night there, Monty. It's ratings hell, man.
Well, apparently so, but I mean,
well, when one guy leads almost every lap, too.
These are people who watched the race who said it was the worst race of the season, and I can't disagree with them.
I do want to ask you about a guy who will start seventh coming up in New Hampshire, and that's Eric Jones. He's had 3 top 10s in his last 3 races, including the win, obviously, in Daytona. He has come on strong, and you kind of first guessed it a couple weeks ago when we talked. What has been the key to his success?
Well, he was Rookie of the Year last year. He was Truex's teammate, and the Furniture Row team went back to one car, and he had sort of like by baseball standards, he had been assigned until Joe Gibbs had a vacancy, and they brought him back. So, he's a teammate of Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, and Daniel Suarez, and he's in great equipment, and he had been I think it's kind of one of those things where you might see the same thing with Chase Elliott, where once there's a breakthrough, he will advance to become, it will seemingly be more effortless. So he's a good driver, and I mean, he might be the next guy to break through. So I don't think he's going to break into the big three right now. I've been thinking about, that rarity. Last week, I actually picked the winner correctly, and which is really sort of inexcusable not to, since the same damn guys win every week.
It's only like five, yeah.
But I've had this notion of trying to pick a breakthrough, that this can't last. That, they're going to be guys like Denny Hamlin are going to win, and Brad Keselowski is going to win. And, oh, heck with that. They're going to have to – it's kind of like I used to be when I made the idiotic mistake of picking someone other than Jimmy Johnson to win the championship. Well, I finally got to the point where I said, well, he's going to have to lose 2 before I'll stop picking him.
Well, Monty, I'm going to give you a chance to get 2 in a row here. Loudon, New Hampshire, a track like this, who does it favor in your opinion?
Truex.
I think it favors a driver like Harvick. Denny Hamlin, who hasn't won this year, has won 4 times at that track, and that's the type of track that is his best. I think that Truex has never won there, but Truex has really been great. But I think if you're just going to pick the guy who's most likely to win and not be an idiot like me and try to pull one out of the hat, I think you got to pick Kyle Busch. He's starting up near the front, and he's good everywhere, and he should be good there.
Do you like the flat tracks like New Hampshire? I guess flat, that's one. I guess Phoenix. Do you like that style of racing compared to the more banked tracks that we see most weekends?
I like it a little better at a shorter place like Martinsville.
Mm-hmm.
It's like New Hampshire is very much a Martinsville twice the size. And so you don't have a race like that can be a really outstanding race with a lot of swapping sheet metal and getting in each other. And it can be a race where people just run away. I think it's sort of like you have good races there, but you have bad races there.
Pretty much the case everywhere, is it not?
Well, a track like Martinsville, even if a guy wins by a good bit, to me, it's always fun to watch what people are doing back at the track, because it's sort of full contact stock car racing. New Hampshire is not quite as compelling to me, but I sort of like it because there aren't many tracks like that. Well, and so I think the sameness is what gets the people about the intermediate track.
Last year they had 6 lead changes among 3 leaders, so we don't want to see that this weekend.
No.
Monty, as always, we thank you, sir. Have a great racing weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
And always, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. And check out Monty's stuff. He's still spitting out novel after novel, and you can check it out on his, I guess it's a website, montydutton.com, his blog.
So his pick, we're going with his pick being Kyle Busch.
I think that's who he said. And that's you can't go wrong picking Kyle Busch any weekend. I mean, the guy's such a warrior. He's a great driver, got a great team behind him. He's having a terrific year. But, yeah, last year it was not a good race in that you had only 6 lead changes among 3 leaders. You want to see – I mean, people want to see a little more in and out, a little more dicing. And
variety.
I'm sort of leaning towards I've never been a restrictor plate race fan. But I'm starting to, after what they did earlier in the year, a little experimentation with that, and it worked out so well. And after watching Chicago and watching Daytona, love those races. I want to see more of that.
I just want to go back to IROC, where they give them the same car and just see them drive.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All were Camaros back in, or Corvettes, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken. All right, we'll be right back.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. We are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. With the quick getaway, a relaxing stay at a beach resort, a vacation loan from Founders can make it happen. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/vacation. Not a Founders member? Visit Relax. Join founders.com to see if you qualify for membership.
All right, a few things to pass along. Very sad to hear the news that a good friend of Sports Talk and a great football player, a great person, Nelson Welch, former Clemson place kicker, former Greer standout, suffered a heart attack earlier this week. His mom, Nancy, a television star in the upstate, shared this information with Pete Yannity at News Channel 7 up in the upstate. And so certainly wish him the best and hope for the best for him. Heisman odds, new Heisman odds from SBR Sports Picks. Tua Tagovailoa, plus 700. Jonathan Taylor, plus 800. Bryce Love, plus 1,000. Jake Fromm, plus 1,600. Khalil Tate, plus 1,600.
These Bovada?
No, this is from SBR Sports Picks, another Vegas thing. And J.K. Dobbins, plus 1,800. The point is here, they've got a guy who's never really played listed as a Heisman favorite.
Bovada had Trevor and Tua in the same they were both third shortest odds to win the Heisman.
So while you were in Charlotte, Cleveland Farrell was talking with the media, and he made the comment that based on what he saw in the spring, and he sees everything because he's a player, he's there in practice, he sees all 15 practices. He said clearly Kelly Bryant is the best quarterback, and it's not even close.
I think that is very much a thing. I asked him, and I asked Mitch kind of the same way. Cleveland was more diplomatic with me. He was a little bit more vocal when in a breakout session that happened with the Clemson media conglomerate. And I even asked Mitch Hyatt this in our one-on-one interview, which we will play for you next week here on Sports Talk. It just, to me, it goes back to what I had been saying about this situation. There has to be a faction inside that locker room, especially among the upperclassmen and the ones who actually came back. They have an affinity for Kelly Bryant. They want to win this. They want to do this for Kelly Bryant because of the way he was portrayed after the Alabama loss this year. And for all the greatness that Trevor Lawrence can bring to the table, I believe that they're going to give Kelly Bryant every opportunity to lose the job before Trevor earns it.
Well, he says it's not even close, and that contradicts what the coaches have been saying publicly, and that is that it's a very tight competition.
The coaches have to be political, though, don't they?
Well, I mean,
players don't necessarily have to do that. They could
very easily come out and say, look, Kelly Bryant, he's a senior. He has been the best quarterback in the spring. It's his job, and it's going to take something huge for anybody else to take it from him. But they've not said that. They've made it sound like, even with Chase Bryce, they've made it sound like it's an open competition and it's a tight competition. And what I'm getting to here is this is a very delicate subject. It's going to be a very delicate subject because you do have the players. Obviously, Cleveland Farrell has the pulse of the team as a leader. He knows what the guys in the locker room are thinking. Yet you've got the people on the outside, including a lot of the media that cover Clemson, and of course, a lot of the fans who connect with one another on the internet, who are pushing for Trevor Lawrence, not later. They're pushing for him now, regardless of what happened last year.
Yeah, I think probably when you look at it, football players, just like anybody else, in any walk of life, quite frankly, those you have worked with or played with or bled with, got hurt with, you have an affinity for those guys because they've taken hits. You've seen them in pain and go back out there, and you want that guy to get the ultimate chance to get it. But the quarterback position is so interesting as far as a team's pulse is concerned, especially when you see when you hear a Nick Saban, and whether he was faking it or not, when asked the question, is Jalen Hurts going to be here? I hope he is.
I was shocked.
He didn't know.
I was shocked by that answer by Nick Saban.
Well, it's weird, and I hate to use the the analogy, earn his stripes, just for Tigers, pardon the pun. But even thinking about, like things like helmet stickers. Kelly Bryant's got helmet stickers. Trevor Lawrence's helmet's clean, coming in and walking in. He hasn't earned his stripes yet in the eyes of the team. And Cleveland Farrell wouldn't say this if he was the only one who felt like this, in my mind.
Well, I hear you, but I know one thing. Those coaches see something in Trevor Lawrence pretty special, whether he has helmet stickers or not. They see a guy apparently who can be that next great guy, with a guy that can spread the field, the guy with the big arm and the big body who runs much better than his size would lead you to believe. He can scoot around apparently pretty good. And also from the fan standpoint, what they announced at Clemson spring game, 60,000 something, they saw Kelly Bryant look terrible, and they saw Trevor Lawrence throw a touchdown pass on his second pass.
That's the only thing we get to see, though. For
the ball just dropped into the hands of the receiver like you were dropping bread into a basket. And so that's their last memory. And they also have the memory of the Alabama offensive debacle. They want to see the guy with the big gun standing up there at the end of the day. But there's going to be the competition. I believe what Dabo and Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott are saying. There's going to be the competition. Dabo did say if it's an even competition, the senior gets the nod.
And the weirdest thing, too, about what I asked Mitch Hyatt, too, because in addition to asking how the quarterbacks looked, I asked him about, is this something that the coaches would come to you to as a senior, or even come to other guys on the team just to kind of, hey, are you comfortable with the decision? And he said, not necessarily. They actually keep this more in the coach's room, which I found surprising.
I think probably that's to keep the pressure off even those guys having a say-so in the decision.
I would want
But
them,
as you said, that Trevor Lawrence has no stickers on his helmet. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yes.
Okay. So can we see in one of those closed scrimmages that we're not allowed in, whatever jersey Clemson wears where you don't hit the quarterback, Trevor, take that off. Cleveland Farrell, you and the other guys come in. This is going to be a live rush, and he's going to earn.
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think Dabo lets his quarterbacks go live in the spring. There's been, if I remember stories, there have been comments from Dabo about letting his quarterbacks go live. I bet you they've hit Lawrence in the spring.
He wasn't
wearing their hands on him.
He wasn't wearing hip pads when he was at the spring game, though. He didn't even have the flak jacket on. He said that he didn't want to wear the flak jacket because he's easier throwing with the without it on there.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating couple of weeks in Clemson's camp. I would think that you want to get this sorted out by, say, August 20th.
I was going to say exactly that date.
Yeah, I think you want to get it sorted out by then, because you don't want to go into that last week without somebody knowing publicly that he's the guy. That guy, you want to get your starter, he's got to be in a starter's mindset moving forward the last week or so.
Dabo and Brandon Streeter both said all three of them are going to play against Furman regardless. Whether or not the order is determined and whether or not the order is determined on the way the thing goes the rest of the year remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that. That's not the game you're looking at. You're looking at that next week in College Station. Who's going to be the starter? Who's going to be the guy that takes them into the locker room at halftime? More importantly, if it's a close game, who's going to be the guy in the fourth quarter?
Furman could be the tiebreaker. I mean, it could end up being. I mean, the one thing Dabo said yesterday on the air, he thought going into last year they might have had to play two quarterbacks. But then Kelly had such a resurgence in the final couple of weeks, extended out the lead and said, you know what? He's the guy.
Don't sleep on Furman. Don't sleep on Furman.
I'll sleep on Furman.
Furman took NC State into the second half last year.
I'll sleep on Furman. I'll sleep.
They're a hot team coming off of last year.
I'm sleeping on Coastal, too, week one as well against Carolina. I'm sorry.
Don't sleep.
Next week,
got a millionaire coach.
We will be very busy getting ready for the start of the season. We'll have a little bit more for you from our interviews this past week. Also on Tuesday, we'll be up at Fisher DeBerry's gathering of the Coaches for Charity event in Greenville. Look forward to being there for that. You enjoy your time away.
Ta-ta.
And we will enjoy your time away.
Wow.
Pro and I will be here. Brian will be here. And we expect all of you out there to be back with us as well. Have a great weekend. See you Monday night here on Sports Talk.